What's up everybody, Nick Brengle here, and today we're talking about the when, the why, and the how of slow motion filmmaking. So it's no secret that videos like this have been made talking about slow motion, how to do it, why to do it, when to do it. But I've never done anything like this, so I just wanted to give a little bit of insight from my perspective on when I use slow motion, why I do it, and how I edit it and use it in videos like this. With slow motion filmmaking, I think there are two different categories, at least in my opinion, of the dramatic effect of slow motion and the magical effect of slow motion. And I'm talking about, in a dramatic effect, is to emphasize in a story, in a narrative, whether it's a documentary or a narrative piece, a short film, anything like that. Slow motion can be used to dramatize a scene, whether it's a sad scene, an exciting scene, a fast-paced chase, or a sports scene, anything like that. And on the magical end of it, there are channels on YouTube like the Slow-mo guys that are just phenomenal, and they really show you how magical slow motion can be when you have a camera that can shoot at frame rates up to 28,000 a second, which is insane, and you get to see incredible things that the natural eye just cannot see. So it's really when you want to emphasize on something dramatic, and like that coffee scene, something that is just an everyday normal activity that the natural eye cannot see at those high frame rates, and you're able to slow it down and really make it this really awesome cinematic sequence that people just love watching, and it makes you want to go drink some coffee for sure. So why do we shoot slow motion? Well, it's a pretty simple answer: because we can, right? Who doesn't want to take those beautiful, high quality, detailed shots of grinding coffee and pouring the coffee and seeing that not only up close if you're shooting it with a macro lens, but also really slow, and it almost has this ethereal, out of this world look depending on what you're shooting. And it really can bring the audience in even deeper into the story. But for me, it's to add depth to the story, to bring the audience deeper and deeper in, whether it's on an emotional level or just to intrigue them and entertain them. slow motion naturally is appealing to the eye. So to shoot a sequence of coffee, of me just pouring a regular cup of coffee at 24 frames a second, sure, it could look beautiful, it can look fine, but when you slow that down to 60 frames a second or 120 frames a second, it just really catches the eye and it brings your audience in more, and they're more likely to stay engaged with that content. I don't typically shoot a lot of slow motion video, but I try to save it for specific sequences, specific scenes, things that I, again, want to emphasize on. I know I'm using a lot of the same words over and over, but it's emphasizing, it's showing people something that they can't see naturally, slowing things down and reeling them in. And there's so many different ways to shoot slow motion. So let's get into the how we do it. So most of you know I shoot with the Sony a7S Mark II, and it has two frame rates that I'm specifically going to talk about when it comes to slow motion. One is 60 frames a second, the other is 120 frames a second. Most of the clips that I'm showing you in this video were shot at 120 frames a second, dropped into a 24 frames a second timeline, and slowed down to 20%. If you're shooting at 60 frames a second, that's going to slow it down to 40% in that 24 frames a second timeline. A few things that you want to keep in mind when you're shooting slow motion that are very critical is always doubling your shutter speed. And this goes for shooting just, regular frame rates, whether it's 24 or 30. It's the same with 60 and 120. So you want to double those shutter speeds. If you do not, you're going to get choppy, noisy, grainy, just not really great footage. It's very important to have a lot of light when shooting slow motion. I recommend either having lighting equipment if you're shooting a scene like a pour over for coffee, anything indoors, make sure it's well lit so you're getting really crisp, clean images that you're able to work with in post and don't have to do too much heavy editing after the fact. If you're outside, it's a little bit easier because you're obviously working with the natural light outside. The sequences that you have seen, the coffee, the eggs, my wife running, those are all natural light. I use absolutely no lighting. The coffee was shot on my dining room table with one light. It was overcast, so the editing and the grading that I did there, I added some film grain and obviously made it look more cinematic and movie-like than crisp and clean. And that's just my preference. Obviously, there are several different ways you can be shooting that and making it look cleaner and brighter and things like that. Another big tip is manual focusing. You definitely want to be using manual focusing, especially when you're shooting those up close, detailed shots of cracking an egg, pouring coffee grounds, anything like that. You want to be manually focusing so you can really hone in and get that perfect depth and focus in on that shot. Now, the sequence with my wife out on the sidewalk running, that was all shot on a gimbal with the 16 to 35 millimeter, and I had autofocus on because obviously in those instances it works really, really well. Manual focusing would be nearly impossible while following her running down the sidewalk. So you definitely have to play around with that and figure out what works best with your equipment and your camera. I think you've probably heard this a lot from other YouTubers and filmmakers, that if you're shooting at 60 frames a second, that you probably don't want to be handheld. You either want to be on a gimbal, a tripod, some sort of stabilizer. But at 120 frames a second, you can be fully handheld, completely. You can shoot anything handheld because there's so many frames being captured each second that one second of video or 2 seconds of 120 is going to stretch out for 3, 4, 5 seconds, and that's usually enough to get you that nice shot that you're looking for from that little moment. And once you sort of hone in on shooting slow motion and figuring out these different sequences, you will be able to implement other effects, like my favorite YouTuber right now, Daniel Schiffer, who puts out some really great content talking about speed ramping, and also that sequence at the beginning of this video, that was from watching a Daniel Schiffer video, that those fast zoom in shots, I forgot what he called it, just some sort of effect, but definitely go watch Daniel's stuff, because I don't know where he's coming up with this stuff, but he's always finding new little tips and tricks and ways to edit and make your footage look better and enhancing the experience for you, the viewer. So as always, if you like this video, smash the like button. If you're new here to this channel, go check out some of my other videos and consider subscribing. I would love to have you part of this community, and really appreciate everybody watching and commenting below. And yeah, just any questions you have about slow motion, how I do it, anything at all about filmmaking and YouTube and how to grow a mustache, just drop a line down below, and I will see you at the next interaction here. And as always, create something every day. Create something every day, because you should just like make a video, take a picture, draw a stick figure, do whatever, and go watch Daniel Schiffer's video. I'm gonna put his video or channel like right here. I'm gonna put it. Daniel Schiffer. Go watch Daniel's videos. He's awesome. He's talented. He's Canadian, so that's cool. I love hockey, and those things go together. So yeah.